We would like to acknowledge and give thanks to the traditional owners of the land we record this podcast on, the Yagara and Turrbal people,
and their continued connection to the land and waterways on which we meet.
This episode of Sportish is proudly brought to you by Australia's peak disability sports organisation, the Australian Sporting Alliance for People with a Disability, and Transplant Australia.
You're listening to a DM podcast.
Hello and welcome to Sportish, where we talk about life through the lens of sport. I'm Libby Trickett.
And I'm Georgie Trickett.
And this is another one of our awesome episodes, Georgie, which is all about ASAPD.
And I think about having conversations about the different forms of disability and how sport can be such a amazing vehicle for participation, for community involvement,
for rehab,
all those sorts
connection.
of things. And this week we have in the studio an organ donation advocate, kidney transplant recipient, and Australian transplant athlete in Emmy O'Neill. Welcome, Emmy.
Thank you both for having me.
Emmy, I think I need to start this conversation and be really honest and acknowledge my own ignorance in that I actually had never thought about organ transplant and organ donation as being part of the disability
spectrum.
Yeah, I didn't actually think about it like that. Is that common that people don't have that awareness?
I think there's a couple of ways to answer that one. I think that transplant, the first important thing to say is transplant is a treatment, not a cure. So the long-term effects of having a transplant, the medication that you need to be on, you're immune compromised for a long time, or forever for most people who are on the medication. Some of the meds also deteriorate your bone density. They also deteriorate your muscle growth and rehab. So there's a lot of long-term effects with having a transplant. And for me, as a kidney transplant recipient, I was on dialysis first. And when you're in end-stage kidney failure, there is dialysis or there is a transplant. So both are treatment options and both have their own different outcomes and benefits and positives and negatives. But the most important thing is that transplant is a treatment. So
I wouldn't have even thought of it like that. That's so interesting.
Do you know, I think even me, myself, going through a transplant, it's 5 years in September this year. When I look back to when I first entered kidney failure, I kind of saw transplant as, oh, it's the thing. And then
it fixes you.
Yeah, I'll never need to think about it again. And it's been over the last 5 years, and it's being around more transplant people and more transplant recipients that I've understood that actually it is a treatment, and it may last for a long time, but it may not. You just actually never know how long your transplant's going to go for. So Transplant Australia actually classifies athletes for swimming, cycling and athletics as transplant athletes. So we're recognised by the Australian Sports Commission as a national sporting organisation with a disability, and athletes can apply for a multi-class in some of those sports. So there is a great opportunity for athletes to compete against like people.
That's so interesting. And I really want to come back to the classification and being a transplant athlete. If it's okay with you, can we start with how you came to be a kidney transplant recipient?
Absolutely. So I turned 40 this year.
Yes, girlfriend.
And my journey started 40 years ago. So when I was born, my mum had an emergency cesarean and I was unresponsive when I was born. And in the time that it took the doctors to resuscitate me, 3 minutes to bring cardiac back and 9 minutes for respiration. In that time, my kidneys actually shut down. So they became, I suppose I entered kidney failure at birth. And I remember my parents saying when I was in the NICU that they were like, oh, she's growing. But I wasn't actually growing. I was just retaining fluid. So
they didn't realise it immediately.
No. We were always warned, my parents were always warned that there might be more of cognitive issues because of the lack of oxygen. But the only real effect was that my kidneys shut down at birth. They then became scarred, and kidneys are really resilient little organs. So they kind of bounced back and worked together my entire life as one. So I had the two, they were scarred. I lived a very normal, active childhood. adolescence, young adult. And then as I got older, the kidneys started to wear down. Pregnancy, as we know, has huge impacts on every part of our body.
Libby will never do it again.
No, I can't. My body will be like, absolutely not.
And so with the pregnancies, both my children came prem because they were watching to make sure my kidneys were going to go okay. And then after my second pregnancy, every time I got sick, so anytime I needed antibiotics or if I had some form of gastro from the kindy bug, any type of virus, it just impacted my kidneys and they slowly went into end-stage renal failure. Right. And I started dialysis in 2018 while I waited for a transplant. And at the time...
Was that always the plan, to kind of start with dialysis and then...
Yes, that was the plan back then, absolutely, because our kids were quite young. As much as my husband would have loved to have donated, we decided that we just wanted to keep him untouched by surgery, not removing anything at this stage, so that he would be there in case something happened. But yeah, it was obviously very challenging doing dialysis with young children.
And also during a pandemic?
Well, yes. So then COVID came. So I actually had my transplant during COVID, so in 2020, just after they opened back up the surgery. So there was a period where they stopped doing kidney transplants in Brisbane.
And were you delayed because of that?
Yes. Everyone was delayed. Yeah. I mean, originally, you're never going to know how long your wait time is.
Yes.
It's dependent on so many different circumstances. But yes, it was delayed. And it was quite an isolating time to have a transplant as well, because there were no visitors. So when I went into hospital for the transplant, you're alone. You're not allowed, people visiting you post-transplant. So it was quite an isolating time post-transplant, but also just the most incredible time because I had spent 26 months on dialysis, going to hospital multiple times a week, missing out on so much with the kids. So to receive that call was incredible.
Could I ask what is involved in dialysis? Because I think there will be like a lot of people who wouldn't even know what that entails.
No, that is true. Well, there's two types of dialysis. So there's peritoneal dialysis and hemodialysis. And peritoneal is where they go through your stomach. I didn't opt for that route because you can have that at home actually. And because the kids were really young and still climbing into bed, I did not want cords and things.
No, thank you.
And you don't want to be yanking on anything.
No, and I wanted to keep it separate as much as possible. I chose in-centre and essentially there's a few different ways that they can do it. For me, they created what's called an AV fistula in your arm. So they connect an artery and a vein together so that it has lots of blood flowing through it. So it gets really big so that it can fit in the dialysis needles. So they put two needles, probably should have said trigger warning if you don't like needles, but they put two.
I just felt a bit woozy.
They put two needles in your arm, and one is to take out the blood. It goes through a machine, the dialyzer, which filters it, and then back in your body. And it does that over and over again. And it's essentially doing what a kidney would do. So our kidney filters our blood. So it's filtering the blood through the machine. And some people, I was very fortunate, I only needed to go into hospital twice a week for 4 hours at a time on the machine. But, it's probably 5 or 6 by the time you get there.
It's a day.
It's an event. Some people are there 3, 4, 5 times a week on dialysis. So I was quite lucky, and we did that because the kids were really young. So every month they would check that they were happy with how I was going health-wise, and they were able to keep it at twice a week. But you essentially, for what I did, I would just sit in a chair for the 4 hours on the machine, not moving your arm where the needles are in, and just let the machine do its thing. It's not a nice experience.
No, that's incredible.
But I got a lot of, I suppose, to connect. For me, I started to get into sport again as an adult on dialysis.
Tell us a bit more about that, because if you're sitting for 4 hours, as you come out of the hospital, are you feeling good or are you feeling exhausted? Like, what's the impact of that dialysis on you?
You're definitely feeling it. Well, for me, and can imagine everyone's very different. But for me, I was usually very exhausted after dialysis, and I would go home and sleep or rest. However, as time went on, and probably when COVID started to happen and transplants stopped and then got delayed, I became quite frustrated, I found, after dialysis. So I do have a few memories of post-dialysis going, I'm going for a run now, or I'm going to the pool. And that was just, I guess, a coping mechanism of like being incredibly frustrated that I was at dialysis and like, why is this happening? And that was a way that I coped after dialysis. I'm not sure that that's necessarily recommended, but it was a great release for me. And if I wasn't doing exercise during dialysis, I can only imagine how much my mental health would have struggled.
Was exercise a part of your life before you hit dialysis?
It was a part of my life when I was younger, for sure. And then in that late 20s, early 30s, it just didn't happen. And then I started to get more sick. So it became quite hard to exercise because I couldn't even walk up the front stairs, as an example, without being completely breathless. So I started swimming just before dialysis started. So a couple of months before I had officially started, just to try and make myself feel a bit better. And I still remember it took me 30 minutes to swim 8 laps. So I would swim a lap, the other end, and then swim back. Really breathless. And I just started to keep going to my local pool and getting faster and feeling better. And then once dialysis started, I started to branch out a little bit more. So I'd probably been doing about 3 to 4 months of dialysis. I started going to the gym. I joined my local F45. I started to do running. And then I found I had done the bridge to Brisbane, and I was like, this is something I've always wanted to do. What else had I always wanted to do? And I'd always wanted to try a triathlon. And I went, I'm going to train for a triathlon while I'm waiting for my transplant.
That's incredible.
And those little things were like goals, and any event I signed up for, it was like, okay, I just need to get to that goal. And if I haven't had a call for the transplant, or if my health is feeling worse than it was, I've got this goal to look forward to. And it kind of it was like something that gave me hope each time.
Because I guess when you're sitting on dialysis, you don't know when that phone call is going to come. You don't know how long you're looking down the barrel of a dialysis situation. And I can it makes sense now that you had this frustration of not just sitting there for 4 hours, but also how many more of these 4-hour blocks have I got in my life? Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm really lucky to have only been on dialysis for 26 months.
Yeah.
The wait time is a lot more in Australia. It's even a lot more if you're an Indigenous Australian. So really just want to acknowledge my privilege there of 26 months. But regardless, it still felt like a very long time when you're sitting in the chair. And that was actually how I first came across Transplant Australia. I was scrolling Instagram, as you do when there's not much else to do, and I saw that there were these Australian Transplant Games happening at the Gold Coast in 2018, and I was like, oh, what is the Australian Transplant Games? That looks really fun. And I started to deep dive, and then I realised it said you could do the games if you were a dialysis patient. And I remember thinking, okay, well, if I haven't had my transplant by the next games, I can still go and represent Queensland. And so it was just this really exciting. I loved sport when I was younger. It was a dream to do something like that, but it just fell away. So it was a great connection.
Do you feel like obviously mentally the exercise and the movement and the goal setting of sport helped in that kind of process with dialysis and then leading into your transplant. Do you feel like the physical aspect helped you prepare as well for the transplant itself?
Absolutely. So I remember when I actually got my call for the transplant, I was training for my first ever sprint distance triathlon, which would have been my longest at the time.
And a sprint distance is like a 750 swim, is that right?
Yeah,
it's half basically.
A 5K run,
20K bike. So
yeah,
half Olympic.
A mini.
Yeah.
It's tiny.
It's tiny. It's so easy.
Oh, no.
It's not.
Like-
It's not. But it's,
No shade.
it's no Ironman, but it was my biggest at the time.
It's still
And
big.
It was big.
I used to swim 50 metres, Emmy. I swam for 23 seconds, so
Which
no
is
shade.
amazing.
Well, you're very kind, but
It's
it's
amazing.
no sprint distance triathlon.
But so I was training for this triathlon, and I actually got my call for the transplant 2 days before I was meant to take the start line. So we had this little, you weren't actually training for the triathlon, you were training for the transplant.
How
And I was
cool.
incredibly fit and not sure I'll ever get back to that point. But yeah, there was a lot of jokes around in surgery around how fit I was for the transplant, and absolutely helped recovery. But more so, I truly believe that the dialysis journey was easier, not just mentally, but because I was physically active and moving my body every day, it made dialysis work better. And that there is a huge gap there, and there's a huge need to be able to have more support for patients to do exercise. That's a definite need.
Yeah, that's so
What you just
fascinating.
said was fascinating, to say that you weren't just training for
Yeah.
a triathlon, you were training for a transplant. I mean, that
mind-blowing.
what you've done in terms of putting sport into everyday life, just that's so powerful.
So powerful.
But it's true, and I think that's why it's a kind of a really weird 360 or 180 or whatever you want to say for work-wise to be now working on the other side of that, and trying to help encourage transplant recipients to find their own sport, because it doesn't have to, or physical activity, it doesn't have to be doing a triathlon, and it doesn't have to be running an ultra marathon, or it doesn't have to be going to the World or Australian Games. It's about finding a sport or movement for you, and that can change depending on how you're feeling or what your phase of life is in. For me, it changes all the time. And when I finally got to do an Olympic triathlon, the Noosa, a couple of years ago, it was such a huge tick off my bucket list. And then about a month later, I got a massive blood clot, and it all just changed what I wanted to do. And I didn't no longer... I think the way you exercise definitely changes depending on what phase you're in. And when you're recovering from something like a blood clot, you need to go a little bit slower. You need to go a little bit kinder. And I think that's what I've learned. When I was on dialysis and I was, training for triathlons, at that point I was so frustrated that I was like, it doesn't matter. I can just go as fast as I can on the bike, and it doesn't matter. There is no limit. But now it's like I have this precious organ that someone donated, someone's family said yes and consented to donating after they passed away. And I really want to protect that. And so the getting on the bike is a lot more nerve-wracking for me.
That's so interesting.
And so it changes.
So what is that process like? Sorry, I'm just gone on a tangent.
No,
but
it's so good.
What is that process like to know that a family has lost a loved one, and then you're receiving, as you said, this literal...
It's really complicated.
Miracle.
It's a really complicated process, because I still remember when I got the call, like we were on the Sunshine Coast and holidays, and my my kids we love to cuddle. Yeah. So they had come in, and it actually showed up on my Garmin that my doctor was calling. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. I was like, got all the information, woke everyone up, and I was really calm, and I'm normally not calm. Yeah. And I remember Greg was like, okay, yep, come on. I said, no, they know we're coming. It's okay. The kids were really excited, and we actually just had so much joy and excitement at that time. Like, they were too young to fully comprehend it all. But they were excited that I wasn't sick anymore. Yeah. And I think, and then we, drove from Sunshine Coast to Brisbane, and then I was alone because of COVID. Then I started sharing what was happening on my Instagram, and just, I'm going for a CT on my chest, or I'm going to kind of keep people in the loop, because I was genuinely just sitting there bored and alone. And, the transplant may still not have happened at that point. Like, there's, once you get to hospital, it doesn't mean you're actually going to get the transplant. And so there was that for me, so much joy from everyone else. But then I was waiting in the ward on my own, and then the surgeon came in to say that they were actually going to do the surgery the next day. And I was like, okay, that's fine. They said so I'm waiting that night, and I still, that morning, you know, there's not great views from hospitals, but it was quite a fairly nice view from the PA, and there was this beautiful sunrise. And I just remember at that point that I was like, someone else has passed away.
Yes.
And someone else's family has said yes. And it was this, you know, like so much guilt in some ways because we were so happy.
Yeah.
Yes.
But someone else had to say goodbye. And I think that that's what is so remarkable about organ donation, is that people do unfortunately pass away. But if they pass away in the right circumstances, it means that they can actually give someone else a second chance of life. And it's just such,
I mean, that's
such a profound and powerful, it is. And so it was really, for me, that moment really hit hard when the sun was rising, and I was like, that family has now said goodbye, because you know, at that point my kidney was already in the hospital, and it kind of, and there's different moments, you know, there's different moments every day where you're very grateful, and survivor's guilt of transplant recipients is something that is spoken of quite a lot. But I think I feel like I'm always someone who tries to live every day the best I can, always trying to say thanks. And as my children are now older, they are understanding what another family went through.
Yeah.
And, they're 10 and 12, and they talk about how, like, of course we would donate our organs if it meant someone else could have their mum. And I think that's
I mean, gosh, what a incredible life lesson. And
to have
gift.
that. And I think,
and the gratitude that you all would experience through that.
You know, and everyone still gets stressed by the normal things.
Of
but
course.
I think, you know, it's not like we're like wandering around.
It's hard.
We're not
like glowing.
We're not namasteing all the time. Like, we still get stressed, and but I think at the end of it, there's just this real true appreciation for life, and the effect of organ donation. Obviously, it's given my children back their mum, and Greg his wife, but even my own parents. Like, I really saw a shift in my mum because she had been holding on to that for 35 years. Of course. When was that going to happen? And it just something just shifted in her once that has all happened. So, but again, it is a treatment. You know, it's up and down.
Yeah.
My latest tests were a bit iffy compared to normal, so I've got to have more bloods this week. That's something that is constantly playing on your mind.
So you're still getting needles, you're still getting
medicines.
And
you're constantly second guessing yourself. Medication compliance, you know, twice a day, my alarm goes off.
Yes.
Those things are so important, and you're constantly reminded of the importance of those things. But yeah, absolutely, for me, it has been life-changing. And to then, I suppose in some ways, my, I don't know the quite word, but the way I handled dialysis was to do exercise and then to be able to go on and represent Australia at the World Transplant Games and then Queensland last year. Like, it was a real full circle moment, and it was being able to give back, I suppose, to the community and model, you know, how great it is to be able to move your body, and acknowledging that not everyone's transplant journey is like that. So,
Emmy, can I ask, and if you don't feel comfortable answering this, it's so fine. With that transplant that you received, how do you think about it in your body? Do you feel like it's you, or do you feel like you carry someone else with you and they're part of who you are? Like, how do you wrap your brain around that?
I feel like it's part of me. My daughter at the time called it Beanie, which we thought was like, oh, so cute, kidney bean. But it has since been revealed that my husband bought her a Beanie Boo the morning that she got to see me. So actually, my kidney is named after some weird cat leopard big-eyed thing.
Does she still have it?
Yeah, we've still got that one.
Good.
We've got rid of a lot, but we kept that one. So, but like, I still kind of call it Beanie. I do not think of it as not part of me. I remember I had weird things happen after the transplant. Like, I went off coffee and I was really into chai, and I craved fish burgers, which I was like, that's weird. And my hair naturally went curly. It's just stopped the last, so we're hitting 5 years. But I was like, is that something that maybe like I had a bit of a woo, is that something? But no, I don't. I feel like it's part of me, but I feel like it's not in the same way when you're growing a child, but similar, like it's part of you.
Yes.
It's there. And, you know, they actually put your transplanted kidney at the front of you. So our native kidneys are at the back, but the new one is at the front. So I'm like, I feel like, you know, you're same.
Connected to it.
Yeah, it's right there. And it's like, you know, you're taking a deep breath and you're connected to it. So I think I would say I feel like it's part of me and it belongs. It's certainly, I always try and welcome it. And after my transplant, it did take a little bit of time to wake up, they say. So it was a sleepy kidney. And we would sing like, wake up. Like we would sing songs. So I feel.
Let's wake up Lockie now. Wake up Jeff was our generation.
But I think the original that I got sent was the original. Anyway, I think it's someone else now anyway.
It's Lockie.
But yeah, like we would sing lots of like, you know, wake me up, like just stuff like that, which is silly.
No.
But it just was something that I suppose helped me. So yeah, no, I'd say I feel connected.
I want to ask you about your experience at competing at the World Transplant Games because, you know, we often talk about the athletes in these sorts of conversations, but I'm interested to understand what it meant for your family and, you know, to watch you who has gone through so much physically, you know, not in the exercise sport world, but physically you've been through so much to go and then represent Australia.
Well, I think this is going to make my family sound a bit harsh. But
they don't care?
We
they
have
care.
harsh families. You're in a safe space.
They care, but they thought I was coming back with a participation certificate. Like
nothing
there
wrong
is
with
nothing wrong with a participation certificate. But I probably, you know, I'm a very competitive person when I play sport, but I had no idea what I was competing against. And, you know, they were like, don't be so hard on yourself, just go and have a good time, have fun. And yeah, they probably didn't anticipate. So I went on my own actually because Greg had started a new job and the kids with school
life.
And it was actually quite fun as a mum to have.
Yeah. And also, bye.
I had a whole week of just like doing sport and meeting other transplant recipients from around the country and around the world. It was an incredible experience, you know, doing the Parade of Nations and opening ceremony, amazing. But to actually compete, as you would know, but to compete and to know that you were competing for Australia, but also yourself was just, it was huge. And I got picked for a relay on the first day and I remember thinking, this is my chance for a medal, like a relay is a chance. And I swam my 50 metres, not quite 23 seconds, but I think for me, I did a great PB and I was stoked and we got a bronze for that one. And I was so puffed by the end of that 50 metres. I reckon it took me about 10 minutes to catch my breath back. But
that's normal.
I was stoked. I was so stoked. And then the following day was the 400 metres, which was always that special event for me because it's what I started swimming in. Yes. So it was the 8 laps. And when I would train for that event, I would always reflect back on that first time because I was still at the same pool, how long it took me. And every time I'd do a PB, I'd be like, you know, that's taken me this long or this long. And so to get a gold medal in the 400 metres by 0.007 of a second, something ridiculous, it was epic. And just watching that footage back of the Australian team cheering on the side, I could see as I was breathing on the side of the pool, everyone go, go, go.
I love that.
And then because I was bilateral breathing, I could also see how close I was to the bridge. And but I didn't know, neither of us knew who'd won till we turned around. And to see that footage was amazing. And then my favourite part was that when my mum was, because they did televise that, so my family did get to see that. And when they did the medals, because they were racing different age groups in the one pool, my mum actually thought I got bronze. And so when they called me out for gold, I won't repeat what she said, but she was like, you know, tears and blah, 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 because she was so like gobsmacked and shocked. And so it was, you know, it was special just to go there, but it was so special for that 400 metres to go, okay, well, when I started in kidney failure, it took me 30 minutes and now I've done it in 7 minutes something.
That's incredible.
With a transplant. Like it just was a really full circle moment for me. Like it wouldn't have mattered if I'd not got a medal. It still would have been a full circle moment, but it was a very great cherry on the top of a great cake. So, it was incredible.
You're now the Sport and Participation Manager at Transplant Australia. What made you decide to move into a role like that? And what had you been doing before? What brought you into that sort of profession?
I had been doing lots of different things before.
Beside dialysis, of course.
Yes.
So I had done a lot in terms of marketing, content creation, photography, but I had also done a lot of advocacy work from the time I started dialysis. So working with Donate Life and Kidney Health and Transplant Australia in various speaking on panels, at events and on online forums. So I suppose I'd built up a bit of an advocacy portfolio and I was very passionate about exercise and transplantation. So when I did see that role that existed for Transplant Australia, I thought that's something that I can really bring my own experience to. From that lived experience perspective, but also I'm just really passionate about people moving their bodies the best way for them, however that is. So.
Well, we've obviously spoken about the Transplant Games, and that's kind of really grounded in the athletics and swimming, is that right?
Well, for the Australian Transplant Games, we just had one in Canberra in 2024. So there was a 6-year break because of COVID.
Oh, wow.
So that 2018 games that I saw, on Instagram, again, another full circle moment to be one of the leads delivering that games. But we had actually 22 sports.
Wow.
Well, including board games, but they are fantastic.
Yep.
So, swimming, athletics, cycling, triathlon, petanque, lawn bowls, table tennis, badminton. I'm definitely going to forget some sports, but there was lots of sports, indoor rowing, many sports, and a mixture of high intensity, low intensity sports, but the Australian Games really are about participation. So
so there are a lot of participation pathways for transplant recipients.
absolutely. So we have different programs at Transplant Australia that exist throughout the year, and then every 2 years we have the Australian Transplant Games, and then we're constantly working with national sporting organisations and state sporting organisations to make sure that sports are transplant friendly for people to attend.
And what's the age groups that the Transplant Games are open to? So what's your youngest
4.
participant? Oh, that's amazing.
4, but I think that we could, I believe 4 upwards. I think the oldest we had was 80 something. Yeah.
And what's the impact of something like the Transplant Games on children in particular and teenagers?
I wholeheartedly witnessed this firsthand. Before the World Transplant Games, before I was working at Transplant Australia, I went to a training camp at the Gold Coast in preparation. And there was a family there whose dad had a heart transplant and the 2 children had a heart transplant.
Oh, wow.
They are fantastic, an incredible family. And they came to this training camp for the first time. And I remember seeing the 2 kids who were teenagers or late teenagers, and they were quite reserved and they were maybe a little bit unsure of what was happening. We were all like, oh, what transplant have you had? What meds are you on?
Yeah.
Which is an amazing thing about coming together with the transplant community, much like when you're mum and you go to a mother's group and you can be like, reflux all over me. It's the same, and then so that was, a few months before the games, and then to see them at the World Transplant Games connecting with other young adults and other teenagers, and they were all I just still remember the Parade of Nations. They were all together and they were taking their selfies and they were, rolling up their uniforms so it looked a bit more swagger, and just seeing them connect and now knowing that they have their own little WhatsApp group and they connect once, they connect whenever they can. I think it's really powerful because I was obviously an adult when I went through dialysis and a transplant, and that was hard enough. I can't fathom how hard it would be to have to go through that as a child or a young adult. There's already so much going through your mind when you're a teenager.
So much to work out.
Throw in, health conditions, throw in medication compliance, throw in a transplant. So that connection for young adults and children is so crucial.
If people are coming from different sports or, clubs and they're listening to our conversation, is it Is it a difficult thing to create an inclusive environment for those sporting clubs for people who have received transplants?
I think that for all sports, inclusivity is possible across any disability. It's just about taking the time to find out what each person needs, because each disability, each person is unique, and what they are going through is completely different. So I've got a kidney transplant. Someone else who has a kidney transplant might have completely different needs. So I think that it's really about taking the time to talk to someone who's wanting to come to your club and say, you know, what are some of your limitations? How can we help you?
Yes.
And because sometimes I would say I'm quite in tune with my body. So when I was training at my triathlon club, if something didn't feel right or if it was too hard, I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to sit out. But some people don't have that physical literacy or the confidence to advocate for themselves. So I think it's about just having a constant dialogue between, if we're talking down at club level, between someone who's wanting to come, and just keep that really open and keep the conversation open. And if it's with a junior, of course, talking to the junior as well, making sure their parents are there, but letting those junior recipients advocate for themselves is really important.
Emmy, you're a triathlete, you're a swimmer. I'm fascinated to understand what your next goal is, because I cannot believe that you're not sitting there with something that you're aiming
bubbling
for.
in the back of your brain.
But you know, it was, and I was like, I'm going to do an Ironman, or I'm going to do a 100K
that's a lot.
ultra.
I don't feel
that's
like
too
you
much.
need to do
It's-
that.
but
I
it's
feel like
not-
that's too much for everybody.
But that's what I mean. That's what it always was. Like, it was, you know, 40, just after 40, I'm going to... It's not. It's not. I broke my foot the year I turned 40. It's not high rock, nothing. It's not. I think my kids are a little bit older now, and they are starting to do a lot of extracurricular.
Yeah.
I never thought it would be like this, but they are. And I feel like...
Welcome to your Uber years.
Yeah, it is. It is.
terrifying.
It's you know, I've got a good playlist. It's okay, but I think that it's turned the tables. And like I talked about earlier about the changes in how I exercise. For me at the moment, there's so much going on. Walking my little puppy is
Yes. Can you
huge.
please just tell me a little bit about your dog? Because I've deep dived on your Instagram and he is just delicious.
Well, I think if you look at my Instagram, it's gone very hardcore from swimming and triathlons to puppy. But look, I did break my foot at the end of the year, which was a case of bad bone density.
Yes.
So I just trying to slow down, I suppose, walk my puppy Augie, who I absolutely love, who I never knew I could love a dog like this.
They're the best people.
I did not know it was possible.
Yeah.
So I used to hate walking, which is why I would always run, because I found walking really boring. It's not boring when you have a little friend because you can talk and you can stop.
Yeah.
So that, trying to do more of that in nature as well. So just taking those moments, which will then link back to trail running one day. But I think just taking a back seat, focusing on weights, weightlifting, and just slowing it down, because everything else is so fast.
But I think that is such a powerful thing for all people, honestly, to be able to like slow down, listen to what your body needs at each phase and in each season.
Yes.
Is so important. I mean, I was the same coming off the back of like training 35 hours a week when I was an Olympic athlete. And then you go, oh, a walk. Pfft.
Lame.
That doesn't even count as exercise. And now I realize that it does. And I do hot laps around my suburb all the time with my kids. And that's a joyful thing, because exercise is meant to actually be quite fun.
Yes, it is. And I did have fun doing the high intensity things.
Yeah, that is fun.
It is fun, but it's not possible to do that when you've then got to take your own kids to squad swimming and then bring them home and then work. I just can't fit it all in. And so it's taken me a little bit to realise that that's okay. And there will always be a triathlon or a trail run. And there are great athletes who are older than me smashing those. So maybe when I turn 50.
Yes.
But for now, just actually slowing down and really being present and actually just enjoying this second chance of life with my kids, because it's so precious and it is only a treatment. I don't know what the future holds. So I just want to soak them up, enjoy the walks and lift heavy weights.
I think that is such a beautiful place to finish.
Emmy
Georgie.
O'Neill, it's been an absolute pleasure having you in the studio. Thank you so much for being so generous in sharing your story and giving everybody a really good idea of what sport can look like at any season of your life, and how it can be something that really helps you prepare for something you don't even know. It could be just around the corner. Yeah. Thanks again.
Thank you both for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Sportish.
We will be back in your ears next week. In the meantime, you can catch up with us at our socials at Being Sportish, and we'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye.